Well, thank you. I'm being honored to be here today. My name is Tuula Heide. I come from the University of Eastern Finland. And thank you, Allison. Good job. As an educator myself, I know when to say thank you. It was an excellent and inspirational speech for all of us who are teaching. I'm here today to talk about higher education in Finland and a little bit about the educational system overall in Finland so that you can understand higher education better. I'm going to talk a little bit about my university, where I come from. Your rector was in the beginning saying that the weather was not so nice in here, but I think it's excellent because he was referring to some minus degrees. I left Kuopio, my hometown, on Wednesday to go to London, and it was seriously minus 20 in Kuopio. So I really enjoy this weather. I don't mind the rain. It's perfect. And then I'll talk about some quality aspects that we have in our institutions and in our education, and then some of the issues in pedagogical development. Okay, and now we have a different type of pointer, so let's see. Backwards.
This one.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. So now first, sorry about that. First, a few words about University of Eastern Finland. Some key numbers here. We have at the moment 3 campuses, and when I say at the moment, I'll come to that later. We have 4 faculties in our university. We have approximately 15,000 degree students, on top of that 20,000 adult education students, 2,700 staff members, including teachers and all the support staff. We have 13 fields of study and 100 degree programs. When you look at this map, this is Finland, and this is the campuses we have. At the moment, like I said, we have 3 campuses, but in a year or 2, there will be only 2 campuses. And this is an interesting photo or a picture because you can see or imagine probably some of the issues we are faced with within our university. The campuses are all of them 115 kilometers apart from each other. So that means that there is a lot of, or there could be a lot of traveling between the campuses. If you look at the faculties, there is only one faculty, which is the Faculty of Health Sciences, that's located only on one campus. All the other faculties, philosophical faculty, Faculty of Science and Forestry, and Faculty of Social Sciences and Business Studies are located in 2 or some even in 3 campuses. So that means that teaching and learning happens in many campuses at the same time. So that means that we must have developed ways of transferring the knowledge without moving our teachers a lot or our students at all. So that's why we have developed some many ways of delivering teaching, and I'll come to that later. But although in 2 years or so we will only have 2 campuses, the challenges are the same. Only one campus we have 1 campus less. These are the 13 fields of study we have at our university, and I'm proud to say that this is the widest range of fields of studies in Finland. We have 14 universities in Finland. On top of that, approximately 20 universities of applied sciences, but 13 fields of study means that basically we have everything else except for technology in our university. Like I said in the beginning, it might be helpful for you to, if you don't know the Finnish education system, to hear and see a little bit more about that. And now I'm going to need your help to hit the link. There is a short video clip, and while it's loading, we were just talking about yesterday over at the lunch how long video clips can be. So this is only a minute or so, no longer than 2 minutes, so let's see how it works. Okay, we don't see it, right? Just a second. Technological issues, once again. There we go. Now a little bit louder, perhaps.
Technology. We need some engineering.
Yeah, so it's fine. Okay, and while waiting for the next slide, we also talked over at dinner, perhaps last night, about dropout rates at our university, and it, like this video was kind of telling us as well, education is highly valued in Finland. You are proud to be a teacher in all of the levels. Now you can turn off the music. And the dropout rates, like for example, in my university are the lowest in medicine and in education. So that tells a lot how valued education is. Just a little bit about the educational system in more detail once we get the picture, but there we go. I don't know if you see it from there, but we entered to preschool education at the year of 6, but that we have had mandatory only since the beginning of 2015. Before that, it was obligatory, and we didn't even have it in all of the places, just bigger cities and places where there are more people. Then the basic education runs from 7 to 16 years old. We are currently talking about expanding it to be 17 years old, but the discussion is still going on because that's going to cost a lot of money for the society. So I don't know if we can afford to do it. And at this point, I remember to mention that everything is free of charge. You don't have to pay anything to go to school at any levels. We introduced tuition fees to students outside of EU and just in the beginning of this year, and we saw some dropouts for applications so far, but for all of the Finnish students, EU students, is still free for all the levels. Like it said in the video, we don't want to have any dead loops, so after the basic education, you can go to higher secondary school, or you can go to the vocational education, or you can combine them. And after that, you can go to university, or you can go to University of Applied Sciences, and then you can you don't have to stay there. You can switch from for example, from the University of Applied Science, you can apply or go to the university, and from both of those pathways, you can go up to your doctoral degree. Then I'm going to jump into the once you have the framework for the educational system, I'm going to go to the quality management. Overall, what quality management is in Finland, we have the international framework for quality management coming from the listed things above there, and also we have a Finnish legislation, and our legislation is saying that all of the universities need to have an external audit of our activities and quality system every 6 years. And we are not so big in accreditation yet. In some of the subject areas, such as economics, some of the universities have applied for accreditation, but most of the universities and most of the subject areas, we use the auditing system only. We have our own national agency that you can get your audit from, and that's what we did as a University of Eastern Finland in December 2010. Now last year, in 2016, was our second time to get our audit, and we had it. This time it was international one. The Finnish agency was involved still, but we also had many international partners with that. We don't know the results yet. We will get them in March, but hopefully, and I truly believe that we pass the audit again. If we look at the quality system, how it works at my university in more detail, like I already mentioned that we went through the first auditing in 2010. We have done quality work, so-called quality work. I hate to use the word that we do quality work because it's what you do every day, but I guess that's the word we still use. But we started that in 2007 when there were still two separate universities that merged. It was University of Kuopio and University of Joensuu, so that's the history of my university. Our goals in the quality management are as listed over there. We want to have continuous development all over and in all of the things that we do at our university. We want to disseminate good practices, and we want to make sure that the processes are clear and of higher standard throughout the whole system. We use this methodology or system or theory, plan, do, check, act. Have you heard about this before? Some say yes, some are shaking their head. It's based on the continuous development, so that every time when you do something, you start it from planning. For example, if we talk about students' point of view, students, when they plan their studies, they started planning their studies, timetables, etc. Then they go into the classes, they give feedback of the courses, they get counter feedback from their teachers. Just like Allison was talking, it's nice to get, or you need to get feedback from your own teaching so you can develop that. And then we go back to the acting part where students continue planning their own studies. So in practice, what this means is that all the feedback, what we get, provides real-time information for teachers so that they can develop or they can measure their success of their teaching, and they can develop that. We have a lot of ways that students can do or give feedback of both of their courses and the study path overall. We are analyzing the feedback, and we identify things that need to be developed. We do it in many ways. Some teachers do it differently from the others, so there is no strict way you need to analyze your data. And of course there are some issues. For example, you don't need to, as a teacher, I don't need to give the feedback what my students give to me. I don't need to give it straight to my supervisor, as I did when I was teaching at the University of Idaho in US. My supervisor saw all my feedback from the students, so he or she knew all the time what was going on. But in Finland, you are so protected individually that you don't have to do that. But however, we need to, or the teachers need to give an overall grade or whatever you would describe that, so that the supervisor would know that if everything is going into the wrong direction totally. And then also we have a University of Eastern Finland leadership group where we get the compiled feedback analyzed and discussed briefly, but discussed anyways. And in several other bodies as well, we recognized of ways where we should go to or what we should do. Then other feedback, there is also study path feedback. And we do it in 3 stages. After first year of studies, then in the bachelor degree phase, and then right after or shortly after the graduation. And that's very valuable as well. And then also, of course, we have assessed our graduation MA programs, international MA programs. And one of the things I wanted to point out is that in all of the bodies where we discuss about the feedback or development of education or our courses or the study paths, students are represented in all of them. Then I'm going to go into more detail from the quality or the Finnish education system and quality management overall in Finland and quality management at the University of Eastern Finland. I'm going to pedagogical issues, and I'm going to, my angle is from this, what you see over there. One of our strategic goals is to be the #1 best academic learning environment in Finland. That's a lot to ask. but or to go for, but we truly believe that we can reach that. What we truly want is that we want to change our pedagogical culture. We have done, like Allison said, that it's easy to think that, or go do what you have done before, but you don't gain any change if you go with that. So what we are really talking about is that we need to change our culture. We need to start discussing about new ways of delivering teaching and how to learn. And that concerns not only teaching and learning, but it concerns management, technology, and all of the facilities. We developed, or we have created, an action plan. I'm not going to go into that, but if you have interest, you can, there is the link to our action program of how we are going to develop our learning environments in the future. We are, this plan was developed in the beginning of 2015, so now it's 2017, so in the beginning of this year, we are assessing what we have done so far, and we are modifying the program or the action plan in the beginning of this year as well. Key themes are, of course, learning and teaching, but then strengthening of the skills and expertise of the staff. And this is all the staff, not just the teachers, but staff in overall who are involved in dealing with students at our university. And then teaching facilities, of course, where we are now. We are discussing a lot what are the best environments in learning and in teaching. And then the technology. Technology is not the one that is guiding our teaching. It should be the other way around. Pedagogy comes first, and then the technology is supporting our teaching. What we have done, here are some examples. In the photo, I have some other pictures later. If we have time to, I can flash them. It does not take a lot of time. But this photo is from a physics classroom. So it's not a very traditionally looking physics class. But this is one of the examples of what we have done with our facilities. We think about active and flexible learning. So I still believe that there is a place for so-called old-fashioned lecturing, but I also believe that it's not the only way of learning, and it's definitely not always the best way of learning. So we need to think about new ways of doing things. We also, when we develop our flexible methods and flexible rooms where you can move the furniture all over the places, for etc., we think about students' well-being and also comfort. But there is also some talk about when is it too comfortable. I'm going to show you some pictures where I'm not sure if the students are actually learning, or if they are enjoying themselves. But we have those places as well, and I think they are important as well. I keep doing this, sorry. We give for our teachers every year some money to develop different projects, or doing some projects in developing their teaching. It's not a lot of money, it's only a few thousand euros per one project, and there is only 5 to 6 projects per year. But it's an important message to our teachers. We really want you to develop your teaching, and in many cases you don't need a lot of money for that. You just need something to start with, and when you go with the flow, it just happens. And we have had some really good results with this. We have in both of our main and the future campuses, Joensuu and Kuopio, we have so-called demonstration or demo rooms, where we have a room smaller than this, where we have the technology. It's not always the newest technology. It's either the technology that's already being used at the university, or some of the new things that you could, as a teacher, you could come in and try, explore, does this fit into my teaching? Or if you are shy to use, for example, the technology we have in our lecturing rooms, you can come there and there is somebody to help you to get started with that without being nervous about, is this gonna work when I'm here, and then be embarrassed if it doesn't. We have about the money matters. We don't own our premises. There is only maybe 2 buildings we own so far. We are renting everything, and the one who's renting the buildings is working in collaboration with us, and they also give us a nice sum of money every year. Of course, you need to renovate all the time the rooms, as you know, but then there are special projects, 1 per year, where they give us a certain amount of money. The university gives the same amount of money, and that's meant for new innovative facilities. And there's also research involved. Before, what was the lecturing, for example, what was the lecturing room before we intervened somehow, and what happened after that, and we measure those. We have electronic exam in wide use in all of the campuses, and also we have now piloted, it actually ends today, so-called bring your own device examination system, because by the 2020 all of the matricular examinations are going to be completed with students' own computers. So what we see is that by 2020 not all, but kind of all of the students who come to our university have their own computers. So what we now do traditionally, we come to the exam situation where there are like 150 students, for example, and they have pencil and paper and they are in the same room. Now in the future we want them to do the same thing in the same room but with their own computers. So that's what we are trying right now. We have, like I said, we have teaching and learning going on between the campuses. So we have a very wide and large video on demand service in use. And of course, like I said already with the premises, we have all of the development we do since we are at the university. We have research going on all the time to support what we do. This is what I want to leave you with. I believe that an effective learning environment is created of teachers' competence, and that's what we do. We have a lot of training for our teachers, not only pedagogical training, but the use of technology to support that. And these are some of the photos I would like to show you. That's in one of the classes where the teaching is coming from one campus. We have had some successful stories about this, but like you can imagine, we had some flaws as well. In the beginning, for example, in language learning, all of the teachers in language were so excited. Okay, I can be in Kuopio campus and half of my students are in Joensuu. I just use video and that's it. Well, after 2 months, we realized it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So you really need to think about pedagogics. You need to have perhaps a tutor in the other campus. You need to facilitate the discussions if you learn languages, etc. This is from one of our computer classes, and this is from our library. And we actually have these. Oops. Now I'm going fast. This is from our library. And these are the types of things some teachers or the staff are sometimes asking, well, are they really learning or are they just resting? Maybe both. And I don't think that's a bad thing. This is from one of the premises where the students can go in without having to take their own computers with. So it's a computer lab type of thing, same as this one here. This is from, I skipped. We think about well-being of our students. So maybe sometimes they don't have to sit at all, they are standing. Sometimes they have seats like this, like, you know, huge gym balls. This is science class, I'm not sure which one, but science, okay. It's this one here, sorry. So, and like the hallways we have been taking into use. This is from our independent study areas, the one before. So thank you for this. Thank you for listening to me.
So if anyone would like to make any question, I'm quite sure that Allison and Tuula will be able to try to answer it or to open the discussion. And well, João, so yes, you have there microphone.
Thank you for the two presenters. It was really well done. I would have a question. Okay. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Good. Thank you for the presentations. I would have a question for you, Dr. Allison Robinson-Canham. How far do you go in terms of standard certification? Meaning that every time you talk about the word standard, you're thinking about that some level has to be there, that you have to ensure that level is there. How worried are you with that, and what mechanisms do you have in place to ensure that?
Okay, so there's several things to say about that. I think our standards framework, I think is more a statement of expectations of academic practice rather than standards that you can count and measure in quantifiable ways. So it's not a tick box with a certain number of hours. Having said that, the strength of the way we work with institutions is that institutions design the program, the taught program, in a way that meets their institutional needs. And quite often they develop those programs to be academic credit bearing as well as meeting the expectations of fellowship. So there are two things happening in the one mechanism. So anything that is credit bearing in the United Kingdom has to be subject to the QAA, Quality Assurance Agency standards. So there are two things going on where you are looking at the academic credit bearing standard and you are looking at the expectations of practice. And what we worked out very early on is that the whole notion of the standards of academic practice or the expectations, whilst there is some similarity across the profession as a whole, there's a lot of difference and variation between the cultures of different institutions. So what is most important is that those practitioners are able to work in the context of their institution. So I sometimes think standards is a misleading word for this particular area because it's not something that we count or measure. I'm doing quite a lot of work at the moment on what would it look like to stay in good standing. And when you look at a lot of professional bodies, they talk about how many hours CPD you have to do each year. Now, I think a method that involves counting the hours you do is somewhat sterile because it doesn't actually encourage people to reflect on what they're doing, how they're doing it, and what they could do to make it different. So I would rather have that reflective engagement that leads to a change in practice rather than say, you should have done 6 hours, you've only done 5.5, that's not good enough. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, more questions, please. Okay, Manuel Firmino.
Thank you for your conference. I would like to make a question about what do you mean, can you specify about counter feedback is provided in the quality assurance, please?
Sure. It means that when the students are giving feedback, the teachers are supposed to go through the feedback, all of it, what they got. And then they are supposed to provide a so-called counter feedback, which is telling the students that, okay, this time, this year, this course, you said that, for example, we should have had more discussions in the classroom. And next year or next time when I'm providing this course, I actually intend to have more discussions. So the teachers are telling the students, okay, your feedback has been valued, and yeah, I'm going to use it to develop my course. Yeah.
Okay, we have time for more 2 or 3 questions.
Real-time feedback. Real-time feedback in our case means that, for example, in the class, you can give immediately free feedback, of course, by discussions in the classroom, but we have an LMS system, learning management system, that supports so that you can give immediately feedback for the teacher.
Okay.
The question is for both. How do you integrate the parameters of technology and the environmental technology in the standard, or sort of speak in the framework?
Yeah.
And in your university, how do you cope with all technologies to communicate between campuses and with students and teachers? You show some pictures, but I would like to know if you have special plans for it.
Okay. I integrate the technologies in
Yeah.
pedagogical issues. How you make, because she's connected to the technology systems.
Okay, so how do we connect the technology and pedagogical points of view? Okay, in a political way. That's a difficult question. We do have teachers. I'm sure you will recognize if I say that we have teachers who are very opposed to technology. They don't want to use technology at all. Then we have, this is one end. At the other end, we have teachers who are really eager to use technology in all of the things that they use. They are so-called, I don't know the word in English, but they are the ones that are going for it. The first ones to go for the technology in their teaching as well. And what we need to do is that we need to focus on getting the middle teachers, and we have had a lot of discussions. This is a good question because it's hard to find the middle way of going there, so that the ones that don't want to use technology at all, they might be also the people who are not thinking about pedagogical issues at all. So we need to get those people to think about pedagogical issues and technological issues. Then we have the technological people. We need to have them to think about pedagogical issues as well and have them to discuss. But in political way, how it happens is that we have students who are demanding have a quality education, quality teaching, and then we have our rectors and the people on top who are demanding the same thing. So I think it's the pressure coming from up and down that's forcing our teachers to start thinking about that. But I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying that we will never reach all of the teachers. I don't know, did I answer your question? Yeah.
And from the sort of framework point of view, the framework's been designed to be sufficiently flexible that whatever the focus of your practice, you will be able to reflect on it in the terms of the framework. That said, the values that are about ensuring equality of access and equality of opportunity to education sort of almost presupposes that some technological solutions will be in the mix. I think it's not for the academy to dictate how much technology or in which ways, but most of the programs that are accredited would have specialist aspects about using pedagogic technology and how to integrate the two. And I think also, I mean, the same Tuula was saying about the demand from students. Actually, the demand is created by our practitioners. So they want to find new and exciting ways of conveying their material, of engaging people in different ways, using simulation. So being able to set up situations that they wouldn't be able to set up in the classroom because they'd be too expensive. So there's something about the whole process of encouraging people to reflect on their practice and what they're doing and why they're doing it that encourages them to think of a wider range of tools. I think the other interesting thing to say about the framework is that although it started being about celebrating the role of teachers, it actually embraces the practice of all those who support learning. And I choose those words very carefully because that means that we have technicians, we have library and information specialists, we have senior managers, we have a range of people who have been able to reflect on their practice through the lenses of the impact on students and the impact on the practice of others, who are able to get academy fellowship. So there's no barriers. So if you're technologically minded, that's fine. It's part of the profile of your practice. So it's a very flexible approach.
Okay, please.
Thank you very much for your conferences. They were very inspiring, both of them. And I was reflecting myself and thinking, well, change really needs time, right? And we want most change. But I want to ask you a question. Do you think that if you have to prioritize, at what level there should be an intervention, a strong intervention, so that change comes faster? Is it individual? Is it at the institutional level on the top that gives the start and say, we really want to have a faculty, a top faculty with great teaching methods? Or it's a down-up movement? I think it's a little bit more difficult. Yeah. I can feel it myself. So what should we prioritize? What action we should prioritize?
Okay, so I think there are several things I would say in response to that. Unfortunately, there's no simple answer, and it's not down to just the individuals or just the top. I think sometimes individual practitioners should not underestimate their power and influence to ask difficult questions, to provoke an agenda, to have difficult conversations. So what I think every individual needs to take on themselves is the professional confidence to speak truth to power, to sometimes challenge what is being said at senior levels. Apologies to senior folk, but I think there is something about your grassroots experience, having the professional confidence and courage to have the conversation that needs to be had to move things on. I also think it is essential that senior management recognise the significance of any agenda that they want to change. And I'm thinking particularly about learning and teaching. So then, and quite often you get a really nice sweet spot where the practitioners experiencing the engagement with students directly and those in senior management positions recognise the same challenges, but they recognise them from different places. So actually having those conversations so that you can all speak from the same song sheet is really important. So you're of one mind on it. But you have to be prepared to have the difficult conversations. Senior people have to be prepared to have difficult conversations as well. That goes with the territory. But I think the other thing that is really essential to rapid change is having champions for your change agenda scattered throughout an organisation. So you can have a huge amount of grassroots enthusiasm. You can have a lot of top-down pressure. But if you've got pockets of resistance and you haven't got people picking away at those, you will have blocks and barriers to change that are difficult to overcome. So I'd say work out what you want to change, work out what's really important, work out what you can change, and then find your allies wherever they are, right across the institution and sometimes outside the institution. And I think that's the way it's not an easy answer, but that's the way you effect the change you want to see. But be brave.
I think
if I pick up from there and give an example from my university, for example, I showed you a picture of the physics classroom. We had, or we still have, a very enthusiastic teacher in physics, and he had practiced flipped learning for maybe 10 years in his own teaching, and he felt alone that he was alone with this. This is something new. We need a change. We need to think about our teaching and learning in a new way. But he felt that he was alone. Then we had the strategic goal to be the best academic learning environment by 2020. And when the top senior management says that, it was a good message for that one teacher and other teachers who are eager to change things. Okay, the senior management is supporting us. And now actually, for example, that flipped classroom or flipped learning example I was giving, it's expanding now really rapidly. We have a project going on and we have more than 100 teachers involved in that, many thousands of our students. So I think, it's...
And I'd say part of having that professional confidence to have the difficult conversation is have your evidence to hand as well. Have your argument lined up. Don't just talk to people about, I've got this idea, I think it might be a nice idea. You say, I've tried this, I've tried it on a small scale, I've seen some positive results. Can we expand it? Can we try something, a variation of it? So I think having a strategy for how you want to affect the change is also really important, because we all have bright ideas and some of them are better than others. So if you take the time to sense test your own ideas, you're more likely to recruit the allies you need to bring the change about. And that's, if you've been doing your flipped classroom for 10 years, you can say, I know this works.
Okay, please.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to know, to both of you, in what extent do you feel the research excellence pressure superimposing to the pedagogical excellence pressure? So because it is easier to measure, I think. So, and if you feel that, how do you deal with that?
Oh, how do you deal with it? I think there's no denying that it's there. And as you say, it's easier to measure research output than to shine a light on the teaching activity. I think there's something about, one of the things that's happened as a result of trying to foreground the teaching agendas, to try and create parity of respect for teaching and research, is that we've increasingly talked about research and teaching as polar opposite activities. And I think one of the ways, there's no easy way of getting over the pressure to publish, but I think one of the ways of reconciling the differences is to look for the areas where they overlap, where there are touch points, where one influences and informs the other. Because actually it's about holistic academic practice. So I don't want to lose that sense of let's celebrate something that hasn't been celebrated previously, that's the teaching bit, but nor do we want to deny the great heritage and tradition of world-changing research. You change the world by doing the research and telling people about it. So I think it's looking for the overlaps and the touch points so that you don't artificially detach the two, but think holistically. Personal view.
Okay, one more question before lunch. Or...
Saying before lunch always makes sure there's not another question.
Okay, I suppose we are done. So thank you very much for your presentations. Brilliant presentation.
Thank you.